back with the jump off.
Hey babies, so I just want to put a little disclaimer on this video before you guys watch it. It's gonna be more of like a podcast, so I'm just gonna be talking about what I've been through and my story. I wanted it to be more focused on what I'm speaking on and what I'm saying rather than what I look like. So thank you. So now let's get right on into the video. I hope you guys enjoy. Hey babies, I wanted to come on here today and talk about my story, my experiences and the things that I've been through, because I'm hoping by talking about my stories and experiences that you guys can relate and not feel alone, or maybe, speak up and tell your own stories and experiences. The first topic I'm going to start with is living in a toxic household, having toxic family, narcissistic parents, things like that. I'm actually living in a toxic household right now and have been for years. And I have been trying to save and get my own place and go to a whole new city, state. I'm living with my narcissistic mother, her boyfriend who's not any better, and my sister. For anybody that's never experienced narcissistic parents or doesn't know what it is, they constantly like to victim blame and turn it around on you. They'll gaslight you, manipulate you. When you turn it around on them and confront them, they act like it's all your fault. They don't want to acknowledge anything. If I bring up my childhood or anything that she did to me or anything that happened, she'll tell me I'm delusional and crazy and that none of it actually even happened. I was constantly hit with a belt. She would purposely pick belts with metal on them that would be super painful, and I would literally be hit till I bruised, and I would be bruised all over. I remember one time I was in elementary school and I was on the bus in the back, and there was this boy on the bus who kept touching me inappropriately, and I didn't like it. And I remember I said something to her and the bus driver, and instead of helping me or doing something to the boy who was touching me, she beat me with a belt horribly. And the next day I went to school. I got on the bus and I sat down, and she came to the bus and she told the bus driver, "Yep, I took care of it. The situation's taken care of." As if beating the shit out of me for being sexually assaulted was something to be proud of. Growing up, she had a lot of different boyfriends come and go. I remember I had to have been like 5 or 6, and I remember one of her boyfriends shoving my head into a toilet, and I told her about it, and she was like, "That didn't happen." And I would constantly bring it up and try to tell her it did, and she would be like, "Nope, no it didn't." There was another boyfriend that she had, and he didn't like cigarettes, and she was and is still a cigarette smoker. So she lied to him and said she quit or something. I don't really know. But I just remember I was just a little kid. I didn't know no better. And I said to him, "She still smokes cigarettes." And she ended up coming to me and saying, "So you told on me?" She slapped me down to the ground. And later on that night was like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't mean to." I started babysitting my sister at 11, and my whole childhood and teenagehood, I had to watch her, was never allowed to go to parties, hang out with people, nothing. I wasn't allowed to have a job. She didn't want me to work till I was 18 and graduated. She didn't allow me to have a job other than babysitting my sister. She would manipulate me into not getting a job. She would say things like, well, if you don't work, I'll get you a car. I would say things like, babysitting's not enough money. I need to save to get my own place and a car. And she would manipulate me and gaslight me and be like, well, what do you need money for? You don't need to save. Or she would be like, well, if you don't, get a job and just babysit, I'll get you your first car. You don't even need to worry about anything. And there's no car. Where's the car at? When I was 16, I wanted to go get my permit. I wanted to get my license. And of course, she did not want that happening, so she did everything in her power to stop it. She made me wait a whole year to get my permit, so I didn't get it till I was 17, and I could have had my license by then. And then she never took me driving after I got my permit. I would always ask, and she would say no, or she'd be like, it's not important, I'm not taking you. So eventually I ended up having to go and get driving lessons to teach myself. I never got to experience what being a teenager should be like. Having fun, being with your friends, doing dumb things, going out. I just never got to do nothing because I was always in my room, always in the house, having to babysit. To this day, I'm still babysitting as I'm working on my clothing brand, trying to launch it so I can start getting money from that and not having to babysit anymore. When I graduated, I had got a lot of money from my grad party, so I put it towards a business, a jewelry business, a 90s jewelry business. It was called Ari's Corner. It just didn't align with me anymore, so that is why I'm now doing the clothing brand. But I, got the logo, I got the packaging, I had the jewelry, I, was posting content, I was doing everything. It just didn't take off, and I just realized it didn't align with me, so I then moved to the next business idea. In my family, not a lot of people have graduated or went to college or did any of that. Only 2 people in my family have graduated high school. So when I was graduating high school, it was a huge thing. And I remember she was literally gonna go to work over watching me walk the stage. And it was this huge ass fight. In my childhood, I was constantly put down. I was never uplifted, never got compliments, never nothing. I remember I was younger and I wanted to get a bikini, and she was like, are you sure you should wear that? You're looking a little big. Any chance she had to put me down, she did. She did not want me to love myself or be happy. And I definitely think my self-image issues growing up had to do a lot with her. The next topic I'm going to be talking about is depression and mental health. Pretty much my whole life, I've hated how I looked. My face, my body, just everything. I didn't want to take pictures. I didn't want to be in the camera. And if I did take photos of myself, I literally would delete them like 10 minutes later because I would criticize them the whole time and just keep looking at them and seeing what I didn't like about them. Gaining self-love is a very long process. It's not easy at all. I had to do a lot before I finally started loving myself. I've struggled with depression and mental health for years. But a really low point that I did have was during COVID. It was probably the lowest my depression has ever been. No matter what I did, I was just stuck in this depression. And unless you've been in it, you don't get it. But like, you want to do things, you want to be productive, you want to take a shower, you want to brush your teeth, you want to worry about your career and upgrade yourself, but you just can't. And it's like something's pulling you down and keeping you in this rut where you don't want to do anything. I would go days, sometimes a week, without showering, without brushing my teeth, I would just wear the same outfit over and over. I had started getting really bad acne on my face and body around that time, which definitely did not help either. So I was like just at the lowest that I could be. I remember around that time I had Ari's Corner, a jewelry business idea, and I wanted to do it. Like, I was so excited. I wanted to, be an entrepreneur and sell 90s jewelry and put it out there for all the other 90s babies. But like, no matter what I did, something would just pull me down and I could just never get nothing done. And I would just lay around and be sad. And then one day I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I got myself up and I started focusing on myself and really changing everything. No matter where you're at in life, it can always change. It can always get better. Just because you're going through this horrible depression state doesn't mean you'll always be in it. It can get better. You just have to want to get better. And you have to find something that works for you. Everybody is different. For me, I started working out. I started getting a routine. So showering every day, brushing my teeth every day, doing my face every morning and night, getting my diet better, journaling, things like that. One of my other very low points was when I was in 8th grade. I just could not take it anymore. I was so miserable, so sad, and I just didn't want to be here anymore. So I, at the time, took night meds to help me sleep, and I had the idea to just take a whole bunch. And that's what I did. And I remember I got rushed to the hospital and I had to go to a psych hospital for them to just check me out, see, what was going on, see if I needed to be an inpatient. And it was such a long and overwhelming day. But I just remember at the end of the night, I had a best friend at the time. I'm not going to say her name, but I told her what had happened. I was in a psych hospital. I tried to attempt to kill myself, just everything. And telling her, I thought, maybe she could help me, comfort me. But what I didn't know was that instead, she told everybody. When I went to school the next day, everybody knew. And I was already a new girl at that because we had just moved that year. So it did not help my situation because I already was super lonely. I didn't know anybody. I didn't really have friends yet. And for everybody to be like, oh yeah, that's the girl that tried to kill herself, like, that's not the best introduction. I remember I was at my locker in the morning, about to go to class, and somebody next to my locker came next to me and she was like, did you try to kill yourself? And I just remember bawling my eyes out and I was like, yeah, And then she literally told her friends, and we ended up being in that same class together. And I sat down and they were all talking about it, laughing. And I remember one person from that group, though, she was super genuine, and she was like, "Aw, like, that's so sad, like, I hope she's okay." When I was in 7th grade, I want to say I was 12 or 13, I started cutting. I want to say I get it for the people that cut. Like, I get it. You think it's going to help, it's going to release the pain, but there is so many other way better ways to express pain. There's journaling, which I personally love. There is therapy, which I know is not for everybody, but there is so many things that you can do. So please, please, please do not cut yourselves. If you can find something else, please do. Now I'm going to talk about body image issues. I've dealt with throwing up, starving myself. I've dealt with body dysmorphia. When I was younger, I really hated my body. I was a little chunky, so I started throwing up, I started starving myself, and I got super skinny, like unhealthy skinny that you do not want to be. And I had bones sticking out, and I still thought I was fat. I had people telling me, you could lose a bit more weight. And I was like 120. I was so tiny. And I still thought, yeah, I need to lose more weight. As I got older, I gained a better relationship with food. I want you babies to know, if you guys struggle with an eating disorder, body dysmorphia, throwing up, having a struggle with eating, please feel free to message me. I'd love to talk to you guys, to help you in any way. Last topic I'm going to be talking about is sexual assault. I was around 9 or 10, and I was in 5th or 6th grade. He was my grandma's boyfriend. I don't know what it's called, but we lived in like a half house where there's 2 split parts to it. We lived on one part, and she and her boyfriend lived on the other. I remember just being really young and knowing it wasn't right, but not fully understanding what was going on. A couple years later, in 8th grade, I did a lot of counseling that year because, like I previously mentioned, it was not a good year for my mental health at all. So I would go to the counseling a lot, and she would always be super sweet, and we would just talk about a lot of stuff. And I remember it just came out, and I just blurted it out and started crying. And she was like, "Oh my God, like, I'm so sorry." And she obviously, had to tell my mom and stuff. So everybody found out, and when it came out, nobody believed it. Nobody. My grandma didn't, my aunt didn't, nobody. The whole family was just like, no. And I remember a phone call. My grandma called me, and she was like, "What happened?" And I told her, and she was like, "What? No, he didn't do that. Why would he do that?" And something that is even crazier is that it didn't happen to just me. A couple years before it happened, we lived in a different house. We lived on the upstairs, and they lived on the downstairs. And my cousin was over, and she came up to me, and she was like, "He just grabbed my private." And I was like, "What? No, it was probably just an accident." Because I was a kid, like, I didn't know. And I realized she was telling the truth, because a couple years later, he ended up being creepy. And you're probably thinking this is the worst part, right? No, it gets worse. Just wait. Her and her daughter are now cut off, but before I cut them off, my aunt, who I just previously mentioned, her name is Jennifer, and she has a little daughter who is now 14. Her name is Kalia, and she didn't believe it at all. To this day, she still hangs around him, still has her daughter around him. She calls him her father, even though those two were never married, never nothing. He was just her boyfriend. And she would constantly bring him up, Andrew this, Andrew that, and she would drive around in his car all the time. She would pick me up in his car. She would mention me to him all the time. Oh, Ari's driving now. She had him come to the house on multiple accounts. And she'd be like, don't go outside, he's out there. I want to say I was like 16. And this cousin is now cut off also. But when we were hanging out at the beach one time, I was just mentioning how, like, I wanted a boo. And she was like, go be with Andrew. And I was like, what? Like, she literally told me to go be with my molester. Who fucking does that? And another thing about her is her and her dad literally didn't even believe me either. They were like, well, we're not saying if it did or didn't happen. Like, what reason do I have to lie? Let's be for real. There's no reason to lie about something like that. Babies, I want you to know it doesn't matter how long you wait to tell your story. Tell your story. People should believe you no matter what. And if they don't, that's on them. Because you know what happened. So that's all that matters. To this day, I still have not gotten justice for it. And he's still walking around. And I hope that he is not touching other little girls. I was going back and forth on thinking if I should name him. And honestly, why should I hide his name? Why should I protect him? His name is Andrew Smith.